What a Club World Cup campaign from Inter Miami. What a remarkable Club World Cup campaign from Inter Miami through the group stage. Hello, everybody. Franco Panizo here on the #1 Inter Miami Focus podcast, Miami Total Football Radio, the show, also known as Miami Total Football Radio, the show. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us, guys. It's been a few days. We obviously have had 2 games since the last podcast. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to say it up front. I've been kicking myself over the last few days that we were not able to get a pod in between the Porto game and the Palmeiras match. Obviously, the Porto win was a very big one. It deserved its own show, but the schedules did not allow it to. And it was a very quick turnaround. The game was on Thursday. I flew back Friday, the crack of dawn. Friday night, obviously, there was a game in South Florida. So that ruled out Jose and Andrea from being on the show. Alonso was busy because he's actually he flew to Peru. He'll be gone for a few weeks. And yeah, it was just tough to get somebody else on short notice. Saturday's obviously Saturday. You guys are busy. Harder to get a podcast going on a Saturday. And then Sunday, I tried again, but Jose and Andrea were once again busy with the NBA Finals, plus match day -1 before Inter Miami's group finale against Palmeiras. So if you guys want to continue with the conspiracy theory that Andrea, maybe not Jose, but Andrea only shows up after the defeats, you guys can continue banging that drum because, I can't disprove it. But this is not a one-man show. At least we try not to make it a one-man show. I have a very special guest joining me here today. You may not know his face, but you might recognize his voice because, well, he's the voice of Inter Miami as of, I think, this season, right? I hope I get this right because otherwise it's going to be a really bad introduction. He is a good friend, someone that I've known for over a decade before Inter Miami. We go back to FAU days when I was at my alma mater covering the Owls football beat. We did some basketball as well, but it was mostly the football beat. A good friend. Now also our careers have intertwined and intersected and brought us to the lovely sport of Futbol and the beautiful game soccer. I'm, of course, talking about none other than Ken LaVicka. Welcome to Miami Total Football Radio, my friend.
Franco, it is an honor. I appreciate you. You and I have been drinking in some of the most obscure college towns in the southeastern part of the United States, and so it's awesome to be on here, especially under these circumstances. Didn't look like it was going to be the case 2 months ago, and I could not be part of the media match in the lead up to the Club World Cup because I fit in a family trip to Japan from the Columbus match to the start of the Club World Cup. But congratulations on the honor from the club and the sick kits that all the participants got as well. I've got a little bit of FOMO, so it's but this is great. This is what we're experiencing right now. This is top moments in club history, no doubt.
Absolutely. And as you guys can see, for those of you that listen to this after the fact, or as you can hear, I think I said that backwards. But anyway, as you guys can hear, Ken has a fantastic voice. He's been doing it for a long, long time. Fairly new, quote, air marks here, air quotations, because he's been around. I've seen him at Inter Miami practices over the last couple seasons, but now it's official. He's the official voice of Inter Miami. Ken, how has that been going for you? I'm just wondering. I haven't really gotten too much to talk to you about it too much over this year. I talked to you at the beginning of the season when it was all fresh and new, but I haven't really spoken to you since about it. So how has it all been going?
It's been great, and the club has been outstanding, and all of the individuals that I work with on a match-to-match basis, whether it be home or away. And I I don't come into this completely, cold on Inter Miami. Last year, I did call the Supporter Shield clincher at Columbus, and then this season. And for those who might not know, the English radio call for Inter Miami is on ESPN 106.3 FM out of West Palm Beach. Also on the free app, the Deportes Radio FC app. It streams live on YouTube on the ESPN West Palm YouTube channel, and then, of course, Apple TV. So there are what's happened this year with Inter Miami is they have found a radio station that works directly with them to provide as many options for those who don't have Apple TV as possible in South Florida and around the country and the world to listen to the English radio broadcast. So it's been phenomenal. The feedback I've gotten from fans has been superb. And yeah, I know there's been some ups and downs, a lot of expectations this season for this club, but it has been really, really fun. And I think there's a lot of great stuff still to come with this club this season.
Now, Ken, you're pro's pro, man. You beat me to the question. Where can people who are seeing you for the first time, maybe hearing you for the first time, where can they find your stuff? You already name dropped all the outlets, but for your own personal stuff, I see your Twitter handle there. Again, a pro's pro. He already came ready. Where can people find your stuff more personally, just your own takes? Because Ken doesn't just do football. Ken does football. Right. Ken covers it all, man. He's a Swiss Army knife, even though he's not Swiss. I think he's American as they come. But he is a Swiss
ultimate gringo. Yeah. Ultimate gringo. Yeah, I'm the longtime play-by-play radio voice of Florida Atlantic football, longtime play-by-play radio voice of Florida Atlantic basketball. I've spent over a decade calling the USL Championship, the NWSL, as well as USL League One, the second and third division club leagues as well, and also on Twitter or X at KLV says. You can hear me on ESPN Radio National. I just re-upped my contract with them, so that'll get going next week. So back on national radio, wherever the ESPN affiliate is near you. So yeah, I'm busy, sort of, just grind. I've got 8 different jobs, but it's awesome. It's fun. I always love the traveling. I love this venture with Inter Miami. I love being around it, and I love the club and the passion for it. It's an awful lot of fun. And now to be the voice of 2 South Florida institutions like Florida Atlantic and like Inter Miami, it's really ingratiating for sure.
Ken's really good at the Dolphins as well. I mean, he's good overall, but he's really good with Dolphins. I watch your podcast. They have you on. Is it yours or they have you on?
That's Alan Poupert with the SI Dolphins podcast.
It feels like it's yours, but I watch whenever you're on to hear the takes because obviously I'm a Dolphins fan, but yeah, anyway, different type of thing going on over there. Much better right now over here. Ken, we've got some good stuff to talk about. A lot of good stuff to talk about. Some not so good, but more good than not. So obviously you are someone that's in the weeds like the rest of us here that normally come on this pod. So we'll have plenty to dissect here. I'm going to do it in chronological order because, again, I was kicking myself that was not able to get a pod in between the last 2 games of the group stage. So we will start with not the most recent, the further away one, which was the win over Porto. Before we do that, of course, give Ken a follow. Tank721 in the comment section says, what's going on, Ken? With a salute. Hello to everybody in the comment section, everyone tuning in that's a little shyer and doesn't comment. People who listen to this after the fact and don't necessarily watch on YouTube. Shout out to everybody. I'm sure you guys are on cloud 9 right now, despite last night's not so great finish. But all the same, Inter Miami is through to the knockout rounds of the Club World Cup against probably almost everyone's expectations and predictions, myself included. I only had them getting 1 point in this group, Ken. They finish with, 5? No.
Yep.
3, 4, 5. Yes. Okay. 5. Yeah. There's a lot going on, man. A lot going on. So
$5 and $21 million so far.
That's another talking point. But yes, 5 points for Inter Miami. They finished second in Group A, which sets up a daunting match against powerful and potent PSG. But we'll talk about that later on in the pod. First thing we have to say here, Ken. Feliz cumpleaños to Lionel Messi. Happy birthday to Lionel Messi. It is his 38th birthday today. I already saw he celebrated. He got a Smurf cake from Antonella. So a nice day for him. Probably now that he's cooled off from the heat of the moment. Saw his social media post on Instagram where he talked about the massive accomplishment that it is to get out of this group stage. Obviously, last night images of him being a little frustrated.
Yeah, sure.
Again, we'll talk about all that in a little bit, but we'll start by happy birthday to Lionel Messi and the game that he helped deliver a victory in Atlanta. I was there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium last Thursday. Inter Miami pulls off a shocking 2-1 victory against Portuguese power FC Porto. Goals from Telasco Segovia and Lionel Messi. And a come-from-behind effort for Inter Miami. Ken, we'll talk about Messi's free kick. We'll talk about what the win meant at that point, what it means in the bigger picture. But just for you, what were your initial reactions to that 2-1 victory?
I thought it was another slow start, much like the Al Ahly match, where it just took Inter Miami a while to get comfortable, and especially defensively. They were spread out again in the opening 15-20 minutes for a second straight match, but finally, once this defense is settled in, I know a lot's going to be made of the offense, and a lot's going to be made out of, look at what they did on the counter against Palmeiras, and look at all of the questions they were asking, especially in the second half against Porto. But the offense had already started to come around at Philadelphia, obviously home against Columbus. That was already on an upward trajectory. What this defense has been able to do, and it started around the 25th, 26th minute against Porto there in Atlanta, things solidified, and suddenly Porto was starting to run out of options already midway through the first half. Now, that came into play later as I think Porto started suffering from some really heavy legs, much like Al Ahly did in the opening match at Hard Rock Stadium. But everything's been predicated on the defense, and that has allowed the attack to maximize its opportunities. But I'm telling you, Franco, if you would ask me 2 months ago if I thought that in the second match of the Club World Cup, if you're going to advance, let's say it, that's a must win. You had to, the way things have worked out, win against Porto. The defense has been really the base for all of this. And someone who was much maligned 4 or 5 weeks ago, Maxi Falcone, has really been the anchor of this entire thing at center back, a position, by the way, that has no depth whatsoever. And Maxi Falcone has ground his way into being effective all 3 matches of this Club World Cup.
It's been remarkable how the team has, in a few weeks, completely done a 180 from where they were during the MLS stretch, where they were struggling. The defense was not playing well at all. Certain players, had low performance levels on both sides of the ball. Nick Smith says here in the comment section, from where we were a month ago till now is almost unimaginable. Yeah. I predicted a 5-1 loss, man. I got to sit here and be honest, and I got to eat crow because I predicted a 5-1 loss for Inter Miami against Porto, and they won this one 2-1 on the back of some solid defending and also some timely goals. Again, we'll talk about Messi's goal. I'll start with just my analysis of the game. In the first half, Inter Miami surprised me. They came out pushing. They came out looking to play. Sometimes you chalk that up to just the initial excitement and the energy that you have at the start of the game, and then it kind of levels out. But Inter Miami maintained that even after going down early to a controversial penalty kick, a very questionable penalty kick, soft at best, on Noah Allen. It went to VAR, and it gives Porto an early penalty kick that is put away by Samu in the 8th minute. A very VAR type of penalty kick for me, because in the moment it wasn't called. Play continued. There was not much made of it, but then when it went to video review, referee takes a look. You see the studs. They do hit the attacker, the Portuguese attacker's foot, but there wasn't very much contact. It was contact, sure, but it was slight. It wasn't enough for me for a penalty kick. It undid a little bit of the good work, but Inter Miami kept pushing.
Yeah, with that too, I just feel like if it's a different club and a different player, maybe you get the benefit of the doubt on that. But you're talking about Noah Allen with Inter Miami that has very other than Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets. Yeah, you've got name recognition. Probably for the broad swath of fans, Noah Allen is one of the least recognizable players, and certainly to referees on this club and in this tournament. And so a guy like him not going to get the benefit of the doubt, which for me, you've got to just let that play on. That was it. You're right. It's a total VAR. Go back and readjudicate against the letter and the spirit of VAR, and to be on the back foot like that after you were trying to attack and ask some questions, that was deflating. I know personally, I felt like, here we go, because it completely came out of nowhere and suddenly you're down 1-0.
They were down 1-0, but they responded well because they kept looking for the game. They didn't crumble. We've seen heads drop before with this Inter Miami team, but this group stayed with it. They didn't get down on themselves, and they kept pushing. It took them until the second half to find the equalizer. The end of the first half wasn't actually very good for them. Porto started pushing, started finding more of the game, started creating a little bit more, and started testing Oscar Ustadi, and Inter Miami got to halftime just 1-0 down. So allowed them to regroup, to keep playing, to keep believing. And 2 minutes after halftime, a hell of a goal from Telasco Segovia, a fantastic off-foot finish because he's a lefty, not a righty, and he smashes it into the top right corner off of a great cross from Marcelo Chelo Weigand, who is often criticized. And I'm not saying that's not rightfully so, but in this game, delivers a great assist after some nice combination play with Tadeo Allende. Telasco Segovia gives some life to Inter Miami. And then 7 minutes later, Lionel Messi, off of another free kick, bends it in, catches the goalkeeper, who's no slouch, cheating off of his post, and Inter Miami takes a 2-1 lead that they ultimately hold on to. More impressive than all of it maybe was the fact that Inter Miami could have found a third, and they kept pushing. Yeah. They end the game instead of like last night where they were in their own half or they're in their own third defending. That final whistle is blown with Inter Miami playing in the opposing final third, knocking the ball around and playing in that way. So it was a huge win. And as much as the victory was impressive, so too was the performance. It was not one of those sit back and counter and hope for the best type of games, not a pragmatic approach. They tried to play. They were bold. They were brave against a team that on paper was better than them, and they passed that test with flying colors, which set them up beautifully for the group stage finale.
You know, it's amazing how match to match Inter Miami has, for whatever you believe or don't believe about momentum. I think that the second half in the opener against Al Ahly, Inter Miami suddenly felt like, wait, we can get in the attack, and we do have the speed to start hitting the wings a little bit. And I think that that's where some of this counterplay that we've seen the last two matches has come on. Let's be honest, Franco, in MLS play, Inter Miami has not been a counterattacking side at all. Correct. Really, the only true counter goal, there's been a couple, but the one that comes to mind is maybe the most true counter goal was in the opener, the equalizer against New York City. Other than that, it's been a lot of possession ball. It's been a lot of attempt to build up. And Inter Miami has looked almost Vancouver-esque in its desire to push forward and hit on the counter. It was massive last night, but it happened second half against Al Ahly, and then against Porto. The thing is, Inter Miami was able to control spells of possession. There was a 14 to 15 minute chunk in that second half where Inter Miami really started to professionally choke out the match, but taking advantage of times when you can track meet it. And Inter Miami's been exemplary with that. And there's obviously so much said and paid attention to with the Messi free kick, but that happens because I think so early out of the locker room, Porto being stunned by how the right side was unlocked. You have Weigand, who's been a major difference maker in this tournament, by the way. Chelo has been really, really strong. He's looked like like match weekend 4, 5, 6 cello, as opposed to the one in San Jose who's whiffing on cross attempts at the end line. But a great ball, and that Segovia finish, I think he even surprised himself a little bit. First time with a wrong foot, and the way he blasted it up right. And if you look at the Messi, the foul that led to the Messi free kick, Porto is completely out of position. They're lunging. They're desperate. All of that is set up by the fact that I think they were really, really stunned by the great buildup to that Inter Miami goal, and they never really found their footing again.
Yeah, they kind of lost their way in the game again. They had found it at the end of the first half, seemed to gain confidence, and that they couldn't get the second goal, that they wasted their chances, they wasted their looks. That allowed Inter Miami to regain their control. I will, we will touch on why maybe this team has been so different in this tournament than what we've seen in MLS, because that was one of my tweets during that match in Porto. I was in the press box in Atlanta. Fantastic press box, by the way.
Yeah.
I tweeted, it's remarkable, or it's mind-boggling that this Inter Miami team has struggled in MLS with how they played against Porto. And we'll talk about, again, Palmeiras in a little bit here, but Inter Miami ends up winning that game 2-1. Lionel Messi is named man of the match, which, this is where the reporter in me will come out fully and be a pain in the ass. And I wrote about this. He was named the man of the match. And by FIFA rule, that requires him to do a post-game press conference, which he did not do. Decided to skip that. Didn't want to do that. He's the only player that in any game so far, as far as I'm aware of, that skipped that part of the process. Now, does Inter Miami get fined by FIFA or not? I don't know. Maybe, possibly not. Who knows? But Messi did speak to the Zone, which of course has the broadcasting rights worldwide for this tournament, and also did some interviews with Argentine media, select Argentine media, just one channel. He didn't speak to us. We tried. We were hoping. Alas, it did not come to be, but he let his feet do the talking, as he so often does. Not much to criticize him for on the field, away from the field. Come on, man. Come on. Listen, you know what? I'm going to share some insight. So many people, because of the victory, I would say 95% of media was in the mix zone. And at these FIFA Club World Cup games, outlets can have people in both if you have enough people credentialed.
Sure.
Every media member can only be at one or the other. You can't like Franco Panizo or Ken LaVicka or Jose Armando cannot attend both press conference and mix zone.
Right.
You have to be, you're either at one or the other. That gets sorted out before the game. So there were only like 7 of us in the press conference room. Everybody else went to the mix zone. Now, I don't know. Maybe if they would have brought Messi out, if everybody would have tried to storm the door and been looking like the Walking Dead zombies trying to get inside, I don't know. But there were only like 7, 8 of us, and not very many local South Florida media members. I think it would have been the perfect time for him just to sneak in there, answer a few questions, and then boom, that's it. Yeah, done. He's done. He spoke for the year. He did his comment, and it is FIFA mandated. It is FIFA mandated. But listen, Messi does what he wants. So
you can go in Atlanta. You can tell Infantino how disappointed you are that Messi didn't show up for his FIFA mandated press conference. I wonder to escort Messi to media availability in a press conference room. And yeah, I mean, if you've ever been in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it's expansive. It's massive. Surely you could probably find a way through corridors to get him there. But when he at halftime is already swapping shirts with players like he was last night against Palmeiras, imagine what it's like for him to be traversing the tunnels in an arena like that with thousands of people. What sort of carnival atmosphere that has to be. So this is just me logistically speaking. I wonder how much of a headache it is to escort him to where he needs to go, based on the fact that there's opposition that's already requesting his shirt at halftime of these matches. He's clearly above any sort of human level at this tournament. Some would argue this entire tournament is here because of Lionel Messi. So it's a tough spot, because the journalist in me from back in a former life, I feel you. And then in my current capacity, hey, it's the man's birthday week. Let him pick and choose who he's going to talk
to. The walk wasn't too far. It was a small diagonal walk from the locker room. I saw Jorge Mas. I saw Jose Mas go to the locker room. They were obviously very ecstatic. Oh, Jose Mas had a very serious face as he normally does, very stoic. But you could tell that they were going in there to congratulate the team for a job well done. It wasn't that far of a walk. Actually, on the way to the press conference room, there's like the tunnel, right? The tunnel from the field to the locker rooms. And Messi had walked deep into the tunnel to do his flash zone interview with the zone. And then he had finished and was walking by, and we crossed paths. He was literally in front of me like this. I actually have a video of it, which I will, maybe I can share here. I didn't upload it to the contents here on this episode, but maybe I can if people want to see a glimpse of Messi up close and personal. I did ask him later. I said, he walked out of the locker room with the rest of the players. I said Messi. He turns around and does his, usual hand wave.
His wave, yeah.
And then I said in Spanish, I was like, "Una preguntita," like one small question. He kept walking. So no question for me in that one. But all the same, a big night for Inter Miami, a big night for Lionel Messi. 2-1 victory over FC Porto. And this is the question. And this is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have a pod. And I was kicking myself over the last few days that we didn't have a pod after that game. Was that the biggest result in franchise history? And I can't say win, because again, I'm being the stickler journalist that is, goes by the book. And, the other matches that you could put in there in Inter Miami's short 5-year history are the Leagues Cup victory in the final via penalty kicks. But that officially is a draw, right, against Nashville. Officially in the stats, it is a draw. So that's what I'm saying. Was it the biggest result in team history? Before I hear your opinion, Ken, before I give mine, I guess the only other match that could probably be in there is the one that you mentioned you called last year against Columbus, where Inter Miami wins or clinches the Supporter Shield. So they became Supporter Shield champions Supporter Shield winners for 2024. Those are probably the 3 matches that are the only ones in contention for this title. But let's listen to Masche, because he was asked that very question in the post-game press conference. It is in Spanish. I will translate for those of you that do not speak Spanish, don't understand Spanish. Ken, I don't know how your Spanish is. Is it good? Is it so-so? Un poquito?
It is not good enough, and that's a source of contention in my household with my Cuban wife.
Okay, all right. So I will translate or paraphrase as much as I can here, but let's listen to Mascherano. He initially did not want to be the one to answer the question. He kind of tried to point the finger at Rafa Cabrera, who sits next to him. You'll see it in the video, who's the head of PR. He kind of says, I'll leave that to people who hear from the beginning. But Mascherano then couldn't help himself and is like, well, you got to take into context the level of the opponent, the stage, Club World Cup. So, tooted his own horn, but deserved to do so. But let's listen to Mascherano.
Sí, creo que yo no conozco la historia del club, no conozco la película completa, conozco una parte de la foto, pero creo que sí, creo que cuando hablamos del valor de las victorias siempre hay que compararlo contra quién jugás, el nivel, el lugar, es decir, un mundial de clubes, pero sobre todo más allá de si es la más importante o no, que eso quedará en una anécdota. Lo que más feliz me hace es que los jugadores han podido mostrarse a esos mismos que son capaces de competir a este nivel.
All right. So that last part is, what made him just as equally as proud was that the players showed to themselves they're capable of playing at this level, or playing to this level, playing at this level. But the beginning was what I paraphrased before, where he talks about the value of a victory and then goes into the opponent, the level. So there's only 3 games to choose from, really, Ken. This one is, I guess, out of the 3, one of two that are actual victories, because the Leagues Cup final again was a draw that leads to a penalty shootout win. But anyway, we'll call it result. Which game for you is the biggest result in Inter Miami history? Was this it? Was this the biggest result in team history?
I'm going to add in a fourth, and you can shoot this down. Feel free to shoot this down. It's not going to be, now that Porto has happened, the biggest victory. Yeah, yes. Have the cards ready. I thought, just based on the platform and based on the fact that it was in Fort Lauderdale in front of a raucous crowd, and it was Messi doing his most magical of Messi things. It was on full display, and it was the highest point of the season. Second leg, quarterfinal, CONCACAF Champions Cup, when they had the massive comeback against LAFC and the heroics in the second half, and all of the scenes that came out of Chase Stadium. I think that has to be included just because it happened at home, and there were so many lasting images from that, including the game winner from Messi, who absolutely took over that match. I think that's at least in the discussion in the grand scheme of things. Now, to the original question, because think about it. This was the first win that an MLS side has ever had at the FIFA Club World Cup, coming off of Inter Miami getting the first result, a draw, a point in the history of MLS at the FIFA Club World Cup. And not only that, it's the first time that a CONCACAF club side has ever beaten a European side in a sanctioned international event. So not only is it the biggest victory in Inter Miami history, we're talking about the biggest victory in this portion of the Western Hemisphere. We're talking the largest continental win that any club has really ever had. The history of this tournament, and anything with that FIFA moniker over it. So I think that it's a no-doubter that the victory over Porto in Atlanta, that is the most significant triumph in the history of the club. And I don't even think it's particularly close when you check off the boxes, all those other elements to give it context.
Tank721 agrees with you, says with 100 emojis, this is the biggest result ever. And I will agree with you. This is the biggest result. Look, Leagues Cup final ends in the first trophy with Messi on the field, an epic and memorable penalty kick shootout that goes 11 rounds. Drake Callender, the goalkeeper, makes the save and then scores the decisive spot kick. Tremendous elements, unforgettable, and it was for a trophy, the first piece of hardware for the team. But this was a step up, man. This was 2 steps up. They played Nashville, which is a fellow MLS team in the Leagues Cup final. Here, they were playing a Portuguese power. This might not be the best Porto team in recent years, but it's still a Portuguese power. Few people gave Inter Miami a shot. On top of that, it wasn't just that Messi scored and they came out on top and got the 3 points. It was the manner in which they played. Again, it wasn't just a bunker down, counter, and try to win in a reactive way. They tried to be proactive. They took their turns with Porto being the protagonist. And in the end, they were good enough. And this wasn't a fluky win. It wasn't luck. They played well and they deserved the 3 points. So for me, absolutely, even though it was just the group stage victory, and this is not, hindsight is 2020 because now we know what happened with the Palmeiras game and Inter Miami advances. I would have said this on Friday had we had a podcast. This was the biggest win and obviously the biggest win, but the biggest result in team history. It's going to be tough for Inter Miami to top this in terms of the overall power rankings, but Inter Miami's history is still being written. It's still very, very young. Still a lot more to go. There's another big game coming up. Maybe it could be topped in a matter of days. It's hard to, think about, but we'll get there.
Let's go, Franco.
All right, Ken, switching gears from that Porto game, and I do want to touch on the starting lineup because it'll help us transition here. It was against Porto. You had the same 4-4-2. Oscar Ustari, Elo Weigand, Ian Frey, Maximiliano Peluca Falcon, Noah Allen were the back four. There was a question of if Jordi Alba, who was healthy again, would start. He did not start. He did come off the bench in the second half. Midfield four from right to left, the usual suspects for, in large part, Tadeo Allende. This is where it was a bit of a surprise. Benjamin Kremaski came in to replace Federico Redondo. Sergio Busquets, Telasco Segovia. Up top, your usual duo, Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez. So in the back, right, there was a change. Ian Frey replaced Toto Aviles, who had started in the tournament opener against Al Ahly, and that opened the door for Chelo Weigand to get the nod at right back. The only other change was Kremaski in for Redondo in the midfield. They played very well. Like this is not the Kremaski you see in Major League Soccer. This is a different Kremaski that had a tremendous game against a Porto midfield that included Varela. It was a great performance from Inter Miami individually, collectively, the whole nine. Now, as has been the case for Inter Miami this year, injuries bite them once again. The injury bug reappeared, and this time it took a chunk. Well, in the game, it took a chunk out of Chelo Weigand, who came out but wasn't too severe, and Ian Frey, who had been having a fantastic first two games in this tournament. It is not a knee injury. Inter Miami came out with a release communication to say he suffered a left adductor injury. That's all we got from Inter Miami. There was no timetable for recovery, no diagnosis of the severity of the injury. Doesn't seem like Ian Frey will be available, at least in the short term. He did not dress against Palmeiras. We'll see if we see him at all training off to the side or doing any work off to the side. But it does look like, once again, unfortunately for Inter Miami, the injury bug bites them. Also for Ian Frey, can't seem to stay healthy. Seems to continue to have some health issues despite being so talented, because he was off to a tremendous start in this tournament. The first game as a right back, then switches to center back once Toto Aviles is taken off as a precaution to not get him red carded. And then in this game as center back, had a great tandem, had a great partnership with Peluca Falcon up until the injury, and then had to be subbed off. Just quickly, your thoughts on Ian Frey suffering and another injury. Again, doesn't seem to be as severe as the knee issues he's had, which is a positive, but all the same, another injury to add to the list. Every time he starts to get going, it seems like something gets in the way.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I feel so badly for him, and I think sometimes fans can say, he's always banged up, and look at it from that standpoint. I can't trust him to stay on the pitch. And let's be clear with Ian Frey. This is not a man who has suffered from lingering injuries. He suffered from severe injuries. One massive, two where he probably was fortunate not to have suffered a second massive injury. And so he's tried to play through it, but anytime he gets momentum going, there just seems to be a setback. And I'm telling you, and I know that it's easy in hindsight to try and lay this out, but if you have Ian Frey, and whether it's at center back or even as a right back against Palmeiras, the way that Inter Miami really was able to beat Palmeiras with foot speed last night, Ian Frey would have been such a significant weapon. So I feel badly for him, because he's a really good, talented player, and we know that. But to finally see it put on display, someone who's been a very good soldier, by the way, for Inter Miami, and he conducts himself the right way, and he has overcome adversity with all sorts of grace and has come back stronger and continued to try and build his career. I hate that on this stage, at this level, with this opportunity coming up, in all likelihood, he's not going to be available. But the one thing that I will say is, when all is said and done, we look back on this maiden voyage for Inter Miami in the FIFA Club World Cup, what I appreciate is that number 17 is going to be looked at in a very fond manner, because he contributed vastly to what this side has been able to do. And I think it's certainly appropriate to ask, what if he could have taken the field again at Hard Rock Stadium?
Tank 721 says Ian is so talented. He'd be in Europe right now had he been healthy these last few years. I'm a full belief.
Yeah.
And from the first time I saw him play, I thought he was very, very talented. He's different than your usual American center back. Very good with the ball at his feet, willing to dribble and penetrate with the ball. Feels comfortable doing so. The fact that he's been able to go from what his natural position is at center back to right back over these last couple seasons and done a fairly good and seamless transition to that spot speaks to how talented, I'm old enough to say this now, the kid is. Like, uber talented. The injuries are the only thing impeding him from getting to higher levels, because absolutely I think he'd be in Europe. I think he'd be on in the U.S. men's national team picture.
Yeah.
Maybe not as a starter, but he'd be in the conversation for call-ups. I think he'd be on the fringes of the national team. I know he's also got Jamaican lineage and he could represent Jamaica, but I think, if he wanted to play for the U.S. and he was able to stay healthy, I think he'd be there. I think he'd be in that conversation. I think he's that damn good. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here, but I think he's that good. It's just the injuries continue to stop him from reaching his maximum potential. Maybe, I don't know if it's the toughest part. I don't want to say the toughest part. The thing that was difficult is that he was one of the players chosen to speak the day before in match day -1 in Atlanta. By rule, Inter Miami has to put up 4 players to speak. He was one of those 4. And we spoke, he and I, in a smaller scrum, because most of the people were in the Spanish scrum. I astutely, cleverly went, I was, you know what, I'm going to ask questions in English. Smaller group. And I spoke to him, and I asked him about that opener, because he looked very good against Al Ali, showed a lot of confidence. I even told him, we saw a different Ian Frey. He was doing chops. He took a left-footed shot from distance, different than what we normally see from him in MLS. And he talked about having fun, wanting to showcase himself and his abilities on the world stage with a lot of eyeballs. I mean, I imagine there was probably some European scouts looking at those first 2 games and being like, this kid's interesting. But then the injury, of course, now robs him of a further opportunity to showcase himself. Hopefully he's back soon for Inter Miami's case. I think this tournament, and we'll dive into this here in a moment, maybe opened Javier Mascherano's eyes a little bit to what Ian Frey's best position might be, because there's been a lot of rotation at center back this season. Ian Frey's played mostly as a right back. It took a lot of injuries, a lot of absences, a lot of circumstance for him to end up back at center back. And I think he looked so good that maybe, it's not inside information, just my supposition, I think maybe it has Mascherano reconsidering things once he's healthy again.
I think there might be something to that. You're right, but it took Lujan going down, and it took Martinez going down to finally rotate.
Jordi Alba going down. Then came out of center
Jordi Alba,
left back. It took a lot of pieces to fall for Ian Frey to get back to his natural position. And he again, seamless transition, excelled with a player he probably hasn't played a whole lot of next to him. They haven't probably got a lot of reps together as center back tandem, where the movements need to be synchronized. You have to understand one another. And yet he did it almost effortlessly.
I know we're probably getting to this, but I just, while it's on the top of my mind, talking about Ian Frey and talking about some of the rotations in the back and some of the tactical decisions that have been made, it feels like in this tournament, truly for the first time consistently, it feels like Javier Mascherano feels most comfortable with the knowledge of who can do what and what he can expect from X player in a given moment, whether it's in the attack, whether it's you trying to eat up some clock, whether you have to keep shape in the back and get really stingy. It's a process. It's a learning process for any manager, especially with a club like this, and especially in a club like MLS, where, let's be honest, you can run into some significant depth factors, and Inter Miami has been vexed by injuries all season long. I think it just feels like, to me, Javier Mascherano has been able to pull something out of this group with short on numbers, because he's starting to know the players a little bit more. And the better improved play leading into this break and this FIFA Club World Cup helped that. But I think, to your point, he's seen in real time now, wait a minute, on this stage against that talent level, he's able to do this. So many things appear as if they're being unlocked right now. And I think that Javier Mascherano's done a really good job of playing to that to this juncture.
I would agree with you on the second part. I think what also plays a factor, and I did want to talk about this once we got through the Palmeiras game, but we'll quickly touch on it here, is I think some of his, I don't want to call them bad habits, but some of his ways of seeing things have been challenged by absences. And now it's allowed him to maybe see different things that he normally would not see. Like, let's be honest here. If Gonzalo Luján is healthy, he's probably starting at center back, whether we agree with that decision or not, whether you think he's been playing well, whether you think his form has not been good, he's probably starting. My opinion of Gonzalo Luján is he's a respectable player, a serviceable player, but he should not be starting on this team. I think there are better center back options, but Javier Mascherano, no different than any other coach in any other sport. You know, he breeds familiarity with Gonzalo Luján.
Sure.
He coached him at the Argentine youth level. There's a trust there. There's a familiarity there. So I can understand why, you know, he relies on him and sees him as a potential starting option at center back, despite the fact that maybe on the outside he doesn't look that great. And with his absence and things just, you know, falling into place, the dominoes falling, I think it's allowed Mascherano to view things a bit differently and do things he normally would not do, which maybe takes him out of some of the decisions that maybe weren't the best. But again, we'll dive into that in more detail. Maybe I can express myself a little bit better because I feel like I was not super clear there. But anyway, all right, let's get to last night. Inter Miami returns home to South Florida, Hard Rock Stadium on Monday night. I mean, I guess you can say they hosted, even though it's supposed to be a neutral venue, whatever. They hosted Palmeiras in the Group A finale, played simultaneously while Al-Ahly and FC Porto were playing their game. Now, one of the things that I didn't touch on about the FC Porto game, which came into play in the hours and the days afterwards, were the tiebreaker rules. There was a lot of confusion in Atlanta, in the bowels of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, between reporters, FIFA officials, and even the team about what the tiebreaker rules were. Now, this didn't come out to play in public light, but I'm sharing you insights there from the stadium. Normally, obviously, first tiebreaker is points, right? But if you're even on points, normally in FIFA tournaments, the next tiebreaker is goal differential.
Yeah.
Now, the wording in FIFA's communication pre-tournament says something along the lines of goal differential between the teams concerned. Okay, you could still maybe read that as, you know, just goal differential.
Yeah.
But a couple bullet points underneath that, it said goal differential. This was a different tiebreaker. It was like the fourth tiebreaker. Goal differential between all teams in the group. So clearly number 2 meant head-to-head result is what it was trying to say, but it just didn't say it very clearly. Kudos to FIFA for that. And listen, I know you guys have like 50 different languages to try to release this in, but still, come on, guys. So it was a lot of confusion, but ultimately the win against Porto gave Inter Miami a massive tiebreaker going into the final day, because they could not be eliminated by a Porto victory over Al-Ahly, because they had the tiebreaker in the head-to-head. So even if Inter Miami had lost last night to Palmeiras and Porto had beaten Al-Ahly 20-0, Inter Miami would have advanced despite being on the same points, because they had the head-to-head tiebreaker. Even if Porto had a huge goal differential, wouldn't have mattered. Inter Miami won the head-to-head battle. The only way Inter Miami could have been eliminated last night was if they lost to Palmeiras and Al-Ahly won, making up 2-goal differential. That did not come to pass. Both games ended in draws.
Right. The next tiebreaker after that would have been total goals for, which because of that result for Al Ahly last night would have
yes,
would have been able to leapfrog Inter Miami. I got a little nervous when Al Ahly almost went up 5-3, and all of a sudden Palmeiras is in the Inter Miami penalty area over and over and over again. There was a fleeting moment of, oh God, please don't let this happen. Don't let this happen. But after that Porto victory, Inter Miami had not only a foot in the knockout stage, but a foot and like half their torso in it as well. It all looked really, really good, and it came to be.
It did come to be. Now Porto and Al Ahly tie 4-4, so that helped Inter Miami. Of course, in their game, they take a 2-0 lead against Palmeiras. A first half goal from Tadeo Allende off of transition attack. Inter Miami was defending a corner kick, and it ends up at the other end. A hell of a chested pass from Luis Suarez. We'll talk about him here in just a couple minutes. Suarez gets the second goal. A hell of a finish. Golazo. Golazo. And everybody knows what that means. Even Ken, who does not speak Spanish. All the same, Inter Miami couldn't hold on to the 2-0 lead. They give up 2 goals in the final 10 minutes and change. Paulinho in the 80th, the substitute attacker who wore the number 10, and then Mauricio in the 87th. That makes for a 2-2 draw. Inter Miami advances with the results on the final match day, but it's in bittersweet fashion because of the way the game played out and the implications going forward. Inter Miami will play PSG in the round of 16 in the knockouts. We'll get to that here in a brief moment. But focusing now, we've given a good time, a good part of this show, a good segment to the game against Porto. So thank you, Ken, for allowing me to take that off my mind, because I was going to be like kicking myself. And I was like, I didn't do justice. I didn't give it the proper time. I'm like a sicko for these type of things. Seriously, I am. It's bad. But anyway, last night, in a game that could have been confused with being played in Sao Paulo. Listen, there were a lot of Inter Miami fans.
Yeah.
There was actually, for the first time in the 3 games, a supporter section for some of the supporters groups. Not all the supporters groups were there. The heavy 2 were not present. I'll leave that for another time because I'm working on something actually on that. But it was still very pro Palmeiras crowd at Hard Rock Stadium. It wasn't maybe as fervent or as raucous as Al Ahly supporters in the opener, which fell on a weekend, but it was still very much pro Palmeiras. They had a tifo before kickoff with the club initials, chanting, rocking throughout the much of the 90 minutes. The scenes when they started scoring goals at the end, it was very much a pro Palmeiras crowd. Focusing on the game itself, Ken, I mean, what did the game leave you? Because there's another game where Inter Miami played well. They had their moments with the ball. They didn't sit back and counter, although at times they were pinned by Palmeiras' attacking and technical abilities. They tried to play. They had a 2-0 lead, and it all comes crumbling down in the final minutes.
The way I look at this match, and I hate to be... Well, he calls the matches for Inter Miami. He receives paychecks with the Inter Miami stamp on him. So
these are not lies. These are not lies.
Yeah. He's a little too sunshiny. But for me, I appreciate the despondent nature, and you wrote about it, and I thought it was well documented, the despondent nature of Inter Miami after the loss. I think it's probably just knowing that locker room, more the fact that they let an opportunity get away to have another famous victory and one-up themselves from what they did against Porto than it is PSG coming up. And yes, is it daunting? Sure. Is it daunting for someone like Lionel Messi or Luis Suarez? No. Would you like Botafogo? Probably. But I think it's more, we worked so hard and we played so well. We should have gotten all 3 points just to leave no doubt. I thought, though, the injuries of the last 6 weeks and especially of the last 2 matches finally came and bit Inter Miami in the final 10 minutes last night, because it wasn't just the fact that you don't have Ian Frey. It's not the fact that you don't have Gonzalo Lujan. It's not the fact that Jordi Alba's been limited to 2 substitute appearances. Think about it. Cello his legs were lead at the end of last night. He couldn't move. Noah Allen was clearly suffering from cramps late in that one, and there's nothing you can do. He's got to stay on the pitch. And so this is where I know he has been available as a substitute, but it's pretty clear that there's a reluctance to put David Martinez into the match, and I suspect it's because they don't feel as if he's healthy enough to contribute. This is where not having Yannick Bright at your disposal has been significant in the grand scheme of things. I would argue we're talking about a potential 9-point Inter Miami if Yannick Bright is able to play in all 3 matches for Inter Miami and healthy enough. So I really think that it was 3 grueling matches in a really difficult group that was backloaded with arguably the 2 most talented teams in the group that you're having to play back to back, and you're doing it on a superhuman night at Hard Rock Stadium in South Florida. I just felt like, yeah, you could say, oh, Busquets should have been better covering the ball, or Noah Allen should have tracked back defensively instead of going to pressure the midfielder, or the clearances were weak. But I truly think it came down to they just didn't have any legs left, because Javier Mascherano has really been handcuffed with personnel he can use to try and enter into matches late to see it through.
Kada agrees with you, saying just playing every 3 days at the highest intensity does it. Plus, thin roster. Adding, Kada adds, facts can. Nick Smith also agrees with you, saying if we had Bright, it would have been game over. I agree that tired legs did it in. I agree that a thin roster proved decisive here. Limits Javier Mascherano's options tremendously. Inter Miami pretty much, when making their substitutes, had to just rely on trying to counter. They couldn't continue to play the way that they were playing before. That invited pressure from Palmeiras, and Palmeiras, with the attacking talent they had, they just needed to find one. They do, with some, I won't say it was fully fortunate, but there were some lucky bounces that allowed them to get the ball that is then played. It's a great through ball in between Noah Allen behind and Peluca Falcon, if I'm not mistaken, behind Sergio Busquets, who doesn't do a great job of tracking his runner, reacts too late. Player of his experience should know better, and that gave Palmeiras just enough life to believe that they could do it. They do it with a cross, an awkward cross, because it was from the left flank, Palmeiras' left flank, and instead of it being a left-footed cross, or where the winger can cut back and cross with his right, he opens up his hips very awkwardly and hits a very flubbed and floated cross into the box. And I'm going to chalk this up to fatigue on Peluca Falcon. You can chalk it up. Some people are very critical of Peluca Falcon, and that's fine. I don't share that criticism. I think he's a very good center back for what Inter Miami has at its disposal. I'm going to chalk it up to fatigue. He heads it very poorly, a very poor clearance, doesn't make great contact. It essentially just trickles into Mauricio's foot, and the Brazilian makes no mistake from there, smashing it into the back of the net, sending the Palmeiras supporters groups into a frenzy. Incredible scenes. And honestly, the scenes, man, I'm not going to lie to you, at this Club World Cup, especially the 2 games in South Florida with the heavy away support, have felt like World Cup qualifiers, man. I've covered World Cup qualifiers. It's had that type of vibe. And I know there's been a lot of oohing and ahhing and raving about the South American fan bases, which they deserve all their props. As a proud, I would say, I am American, but Latin American. It's good to see the South Americans get their flowers, and it just adds an extra element, man. It just adds I don't know. I haven't watched the game back on TV, so I don't know how on TV, if it comes out.
It translated.
Yeah. Okay.
It definitely translated. I will give Inter Miami fans credit, though, because, tangible roars on the Allende goal, and then certainly on the Suarez goal. But that part of that is Inter Miami completely choked out that massive Palmeiras crowd for 82 2 minutes in this match. I mean, what a significant achievement. But it's funny you mentioned the FIFA Club World Cup has been so good for the South American sides. We are too Europeized or Europeanized. However,
Eurocentric. We're too
yeah,
Eurocentric when it comes to the
yeah.
game.
That's a much better way to put it than the two made up words I tried to throw out there. But we're so influenced by European football, and I think that we sometimes it gets ignored, that the flair and the passion for the South American product. I got back with my family from Tokyo, Franco, the night before the FIFA Club World Cup started. I'm at Fort Lauderdale Airport, okay? It's 1:30 in the morning, and there are Boca Juniors fans all over the baggage claim. I'm telling you, there are 75, and they're fully dressed in their kits. Some of them have flags that they've pulled off of the baggage carousel already. And I told my kids, I'm like, hey, this is going to be real deal stuff at the stadium. And sure enough, that's the fan support of the tournament, what they've thrown out there. So it's been absolutely awesome. But the Palmeiras fans absolutely erupt, and certainly they fought hard to grab the point. But I want to be clear about something. Inter Miami was the more deserving and better side against Palmeiras. Different style to get there. At times they had to sit back and keep their shape defensively and pick their spots, which is totally fine. Listen, I'm a U.S. men's national team fan. That was the Bob Bradley approach to many trophies in his time as the boss of the American side. But let's not forget, too, in the second half, it certainly looked like Inter Miami was going to see this through because they were on the ball constantly. The ball movement was phenomenal. The goal for Suarez, the build-up to that, the patience, that would be a world-class goal, world-class build-up in any league on planet Earth, okay? So I think that Inter Miami fans, instead of woe is me, PSG's coming up, oh, this could be bad. How can you even think that after what you've seen over the last 3 matches from a club that 4 weeks ago was getting absolutely obliterated in Minnesota? So you're going to tell me that the opportunity to play PSG, suddenly you're going to get some pee-pee pants here because you wish that they could have held on to this result. This is Palmeiras, man. We're talking about one of the most legendary clubs, tradition-filled clubs on the planet, and you should have beaten them. I would take the 3 matches as a collective and say, boy, has there been some unbelievable progress with the most injured team in this entire tournament and the most injured team in the league that this side comes from. And what they've done is remarkable. It's the standard. It's probably, Franco, it's going to be probably another decade, 15, 20 years before another MLS side not named Inter Miami is able to do what Inter Miami has done in the FIFA Club World Cup. So take it from that perspective instead of, oh no, here it comes Saturday. Like, don't do that to yourself. It's a great opportunity to play PSG.
We'll touch on that PSG. I'm gonna keep you a little bit longer. Hopefully, the missus doesn't get mad at me because otherwise I'm gonna hear it at the next Super Bowl party. Inter Miami's 4-4-2 in the game against Palmeiras. Let's go to study again. Chelo Weigand at right back. Thomas Aviles replacing the injured Ian Frey. Maximiliano Peluca Falcon, Noah Allen. So that was the one change there. Toto for Ian Frey. Jordi Alba again, still not, as you mentioned, ready to start. Midfield 4, Tadeo Allende, Fede Redondo back in ahead of Benjamin Kremaski, Sergio Busquets, Telasco Segovia up top, Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez. Hell of a game from the team. Palmeiras was more goal threatening than Porto was. They couldn't find that last bit of quality in the final third, but they were able to penetrate more. They were able to have Inter Miami scrambling, a lot of, last-ditch tackles, but Inter Miami dogged, determined, resolute, were able to put out those fires in large part. Ustadi wasn't overly tested. There were a lot of close chances that almost a better contact or half a foot less, and then maybe it's a clear-cut chance. But Inter Miami did a good enough job defensively to keep Palmeiras at bay while allowing their attackers to do what they do. Again, the first goal in transition, Luis Suarez with a chested pass into the path of Tadeo Allende, who then has essentially the whole Palmeiras defensive half to run at. Goalkeeper Weberton didn't come off his line. He just wanted to kind of stand his ground, came a little bit off his line to try to force Tadeo Allende into a bad shot. They don't want to give him too much space, but it didn't work off. Tadeo Allende scores a clinical goal to give Inter Miami a 1-0 lead. He touched on Luis Suarez's goal. Obviously some build-up before then, and then he does a lot of the solo work himself, dribbling by two defenders. I mean, this wasn't a speedy dribbling run. This was a powerful dribbling run. There were some bounces that went his way, but it was
El
with
Toro.
the sheer force, sheer desire to just push forward, cuts by the final defender, and then unleashes a beautiful left-footed blast into the top left corner. Weberton got a hand to it, but couldn't push it out. The shot was just too damn strong. El Pistolero, he actually, funnily enough, I don't think that's a word, maybe funny enough, tweeted today in response to DAZN's tweet about his goal. He said in Spanish, El Pistolero todavía tenía una bala, laughing emojis. So that translates to El Pistolero, which is his nickname, which I guess would be the gunman. Still had a bullet left in the chamber. So obviously a hell of a goal. He's been very criticized this year, and I don't think it's without reason. But in this one, he gets an assist and he gets a goal. In a game where, listen, Messi didn't have a bad game, but Messi did not factor into the score sheet, neither on goals, neither on assists. And it was Suarez who gets a goal and Suarez who gets an assist, turns back the clock. This is the type of performance we need to see more of from Suarez. He touched on and talked about in the man of the match press conference that he did do, unlike some people. He did touch on, he mentioned, I don't have the clip here, but he mentioned physically, for players like him and the other members of the Cuatro Fantásticos, the Fantastic Four, physically at times it's going to be a challenge because of just age, but that mentally with, their ability to read the game through their long careers, their thought process is going to be quicker often than a lot of other players. But this is the Suarez we need to see. We need to see that thought process, and we need to see this level of execution more regularly. He was huge for Inter Miami last night.
I think there have been times during the course of the season, let's be clear, Messi and Suarez are all in on winning. The competitiveness is still there, and they're not there to just put up numbers and ride into the sunset. I certainly think both have, and especially Messi, have a belief in the project, as I've heard you write about and people address it as. There is a pride that has come in to taking this 6-year-old club and trying to compete with the best in the world. No club in the history of the sport that is the age of Inter Miami has ever been at the stage, the level that it currently finds itself in amongst the world's best. This is unprecedented. It will never, ever, ever happen again. And I think that there's great pride that they take in that. Back to my point, though, I think Suarez, part of him and his approach to this season, and last year he was magnificent. 20 goals, was with the amount of games Messi missed, he was the focal point at the top of the formation, and he was clinical. This season, I think there are times where if this makes sense, he's a little too unselfish. He's trying to thread passes through traffic and contribute to build up where maybe a Luis Suarez of a decade ago puts his head down like he did last night, charges forward, makes something happen, is able to use his God-given physical gifts. I almost feel like sometimes he needs to be more selfish. And that goal, that was confident, reckless to glory Luis Suarez. His trademark: go in, score, and leave defenders in your wake. And maybe he needs more of that, because that looked like the Suarez of last year. That looked like the Suarez of Atletico. That looked like the Suarez of Barcelona. That was, and I know you're not going to get that, but man, that type of him dictating where he's going to go, we haven't seen a ton of that this year.
You have not. Hopefully, for Inter Miami's sake, they see more of that. If not the rest of this tournament, the rest of the MLS season, because it would help take the pressure off Messi a little bit, and obviously give Inter Miami another goal scoring threat. I think a big problem for them, a lot of people point to the defense. For me, the attack has been a big point as well. I mean, they've lost a lot of goals. They lost a lot of players that can contribute, that can score goals.
Sure.
If you think about it on a bigger picture, and actually, I'll leave that thought. Because otherwise, we're going to stay here for forever. We'll get to that thought.
We're going to be here till midnight.
Yeah. Then you're never coming back. You'll be like, I'm never coming back on again. You'd like head me for 3 hours, Franco. So the game and the performance collectively were positives in the big picture. But Inter Miami was dejected after the game. There wasn't many smiles. There wasn't much celebration at the fact that they did the unthinkable and qualified from this group into the next round. A lot of the players were very there was a somber mood in the mix zone. There wasn't a lot of happiness there. And that's because they let this lead slip away. And they let winning the group slip away. Yeah. Forget the next round, which of course is the reward for winning a group, not winning a group. The fact that they were that close to getting 7 points from this group and being able to surpass expectations even more, I think that hurt as much as anything else with regards to PSG, like you touched on earlier. They were so close. They just couldn't hang on. Legs gave out, not enough options on the bench. They brought in Baltasar Rodriguez in this game, who we haven't seen much of this season since he signed due to injuries. Physically doesn't look the part on the first goal, gets beaten to the header that ends up in the pass to for the opener. All that said, let's listen to Inter Miami. Now, the audio is not great because these mix zones at this new World Cup layout haven't been fantastic, but you can make out what they're saying. It's Tadeo Allende in Spanish on a bittersweet feeling of qualifying via 2-2 draw that came in this manner.
Buenas noches. Bueno, sí, agridulce, como dijiste, la verdad que nos vamos un poco golpeados porque bueno, venimos con el resultado arriba, pero bueno, ellos se pusieron y salieron fuertes, los cambios de ellos entraron muy bien, pero bueno, a ver, también estamos tranquilos porque hicimos un partidazo, tuvimos el control de la pelota mucho tiempo, eso nos dio mucho aire, creo que competimos de la mejor manera.
So to paraphrase, he does say we're a little hurt with the way things happen. It is bittersweet because we were up 2-0. He does focus on the positives there. He said, we had the ball for large stretches. We had un partidazo, which means we played a great game. And we played in the best way possible. I agree with a lot of that. I also understand completely the frustration. Mascherano post-game also shared the sentiment that it was unfortunate that Inter Miami couldn't see it through. And again, he touched on, I'm paraphrasing here, the reward being a first-place finish for this team because of how well they played on the balance of things over the course of these 3 matches. Where it gets interesting, Ken, and we can start transitioning to previewing the next match, which Inter Miami will play PSG as a result of this 2-2 draw with Palmeiras. They'll play PSG in Lionel Messi against the team that he spent 2 seasons at, 2 very criticized seasons at, 2 seasons that he has described as not being the happiest in his career. When he first got here, he talked about finding joy and just a different type of lifestyle as opposed to when he was in Paris. So the storylines are there for all the juiciness of, is Messi going to have more motivation? How badly does he want to win? All those things. But PSG, Paris Saint-Germain are the UEFA Champions League winners. They are the current champions. They play at a very, very high level. They weren't perfect in group stage. They did lose a game to Botafogo, so they're not invincible, but clearly they are at a very high level. And Inter Miami last night, I think, I mean, this is my sensation, my reading into things. Besides the fact that obviously they did not win the group, which on its own is something maybe they deserved, I think they also really wanted to avoid PSG. I think that there is a reality that they don't think deep down inside that they can do it against PSG, which I don't think they should have that thought. They've shown that they can compete even against top, upper level opponents that are supposed on paper better than them. But I will quickly listen to Noah Allen. Noah Allen was asked, and you'll hear the question by a colleague about would they have preferred to play Botafogo? Would they have preferred to finish in first so that they could play Botafogo in the next round? And a very candid Noah Allen says yes.
Messi say anything about it?
I mean, yeah, so probably. But at the same time, we're excited for the challenge. We know that win or lose, we're gonna go into the next round with full belief.
So if you dissect those comments, he says yes, probably, but we're still excited for the challenge. Win or lose. He says win or lose. I think he was gonna say win or lose, and then he like his thoughts weren't together. He was already thinking about the next game, but then he brought it back to this game. He says win or lose, and then he tries to touch on the PSG game again.
Yeah.
There's another soundbite I'm going to share. One more, Jordi Alba, because he makes a very small comment, but I think it's very telling with how Inter Miami feels about their chances this weekend. But let's listen to Jordi Alba now.
Si me dices, hubiese firmado, obviamente todos hubiesen firmado pasar de grupos, pero la sensación de ir 2-0 y hoy pues que se empaten, pues una lástima y ahora pues bueno, nos toca el PSG, vamos a ver hasta dónde competimos, obviamente vamos a competir, vamos a luchar por ganar el partido, sabiendo la dificultad que conlleva jugar con un equipo de esta envergadura y bueno, lo que nos señal, ¿no? Son 90 minutos, hoy en día cualquier equipo te puede ganar y vamos a luchar.
So Jordi Alba ends that by saying, why not dream? We're going to fight. He says all the right things that a professional would say. But just like Noah Allen, there's like a moment of candidness that comes out that they catch themselves before they go into the more, as we say in Spanish, de cassette response, which is just like a standard response. He says, I don't know if you picked up on it. I'll share with you here, Ken, and for all the listeners that don't speak Spanish. He says, we will see till where we can compete when he talks about PSG. And he catches himself, and then he says, clearly we're going to compete. But to me, it showed a mindset, a mentality that they probably don't think they can do it.
See, that type of language, though, that we heard from Noah Allen and Jordi Alba is very similar to what we were hearing from Messi and Sergio Busquets in the lead up to the FIFA Club World Cup, where it was certainly we're not at the level of all the other teams that we're going to be facing, but it'll be a great opportunity. I just think that this has been sort of their approach. Hey, we know we don't have the depth. We don't have the unlimited spending. We don't have the talent. This is great opportunity. I do think that internally, and I'm not saying that they're sitting in the locker room saying to themselves, oh man, PSG, I think we can drop 5 on them, or man, we'll be able to track meet them like we did against Palmeiras. And certainly, if you're Noah Allen, yeah, of course you want to play the 8th place side in the top division of Brazilian football over the European champions in PSG. But this is also a Botafogo team that beat PSG, as you mentioned, in the group stage as well. So I just think they're being, I don't know if it's a lack of confidence. And again, this might be my rose-colored, my pink-colored Inter Miami glasses on right now, but I almost think it's more of the tact they've chosen to take with any opponent that they've spoken about, as opposed to, well, we're screwed. PSG is just going to ramrod us on Saturday. Like, Jordi Alba's not intimidated. Messi's not going to be intimidated. Suarez isn't going to be intimidated. I think what it's going to come down to, though, is these guys need to lift up and elevate the Noah Allens of the world, the Tadeo Allende's of the world, the Baltasar Rodriguez's, if he gets run, of the world. Hey, you belong on the same pitch because you belonged on the same pitch the previous 3 matches of this tournament.
So I'm going to make you put your hands to the fire here. And so I'm going to put you in a tough spot. Prediction time,
okay.
Ken. Prediction time. Give me a result. You don't have to give me a score. Just give me a result. I
have a tough time believing that PSG is not going to find a way to end Inter Miami's run, a very worthwhile, memorable, historic run. I mean, again, we're talking about the Champions League winners. It was a month ago that they were flying to the finish line of the most heralded club tournament on the planet. But what this tournament has taught me about Inter Miami is now never say never. Listen to how we've adjusted expectations. Going in, I think there were obviously, because it's Inter Miami, observers who wanted to see Inter Miami humiliated because they're going to have a target on their back. I think a good portion of Inter Miami fans were saying, oh, if we can keep it to within 2 or 3 goals against Porto and Palmeiras, that's great. It'll at least put me at ease. And now you come out of there with 5 points, and it could have been 9, and suddenly it just seems like the expectations, the ceiling has changed elevation a bit. So no, I'm not under any auspices that Inter Miami's going to go in and boss PSG, but if this game is competitive and Inter Miami is making PSG extremely nervous, a 78th, 79th, 80th minute, I will not be surprised at all. But PSG is just, we're talking about the quality of quality in the sport. It's a really tough ask of Inter Miami. We'll put it that way.
The creme de la creme. But not necessarily firing on all cylinders, like you said. I agree with you that I don't think you can count this Inter Miami team out based on what we've seen. Like I predicted again that they would not go far. I predicted they would not make it out of the group stage. I predicted 1 point for them, and I thought that in itself would have been respectable and to some levels a successful tournament, given that there are restrictions, given all the things that we've talked about on this episode. So I won't count them out. I won't say that there's no chance. I will pat myself on the back and say that the way the tournament plays and that they're playing teams that are better than them, that could help them maybe. You know, they're not the favorites. They don't have to carry that role in those situations.
Sure.
They can play a little more free because they have nothing to lose. That does factor in. Those dynamics do factor in, and that will be the same on Sunday. PSG will be the one with the pressure to advance. They're the ones that are expected to win. Inter Miami, by and large, no one expects them to beat PSG. So that allows you to play a little freer. If you go down 1-0, you don't feel that tension that you do if you are the favorite and you start trailing. So I think those things do play in Inter Miami's favor. But at the end, like you said, I agree with creme de la creme. I think PSG is a step too far for Inter Miami. If there's any chance for Inter Miami, it's going to be off the backs of Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez. They're going to have tremendous performances. The team collectively will have to do well. Like Fer Redondo, we didn't really touch on here in this last game against Palmeiras, but he was very good. He avoided maybe some of the type of silly mistakes under little pressure that you see sometimes in MLS play. So you're going to need a lot of very good individual performances as well as a strong collective. You're going to have any opportunity. for me, if Inter Miami advances, it would be through a draw that leads to a penalty kick shootout, and they win that way. I don't think they will beat PSG over 90 minutes or over the course of the match on the field. You know, if you can get a draw and go to penalty kicks, take your chance there. It's a coin toss, a lot of people say. So maybe that's the best formula for you. All the same, my prediction will be a loss for Inter Miami. Score, I think Inter Miami gets one, but I think PSG will prove too much. And maybe I'll eat my words again. Maybe this is like good luck for Inter Miami. 4-1 PSG.
I tell you, I tell you what, if Inter Miami can beat PSG, you might not even have a post-match reaction show because you'll be passed out. It'll be shocking. It'll be that will be the
most Mas will come run to the press box and say, in your face.
I do wish that this was being played outdoors. If somehow Inter Miami could have dragged PSG into Hard Rock Stadium as opposed to playing indoors at Mercedes-Benz, that would have been ideal. Yeah, I mean, Luis Enrique has been pretty open about the fact he doesn't love the playing surfaces. So what does he get? Artificial surface there at Mercedes-Benz. So who knows? They'll be uncomfortable either way. But we'll have to see. A banged up Inter Miami side.
I think it is grass, but it's grass laid over the turf field, which still doesn't play as naturally as grass.
Right.
So,
you're right. It's not the synthetic stuff that Atlanta United plays
like a
on.
Carpet of grass laid over the turf field so that it kind of simulates real grass. The only reason I can point that out is because in match day -1, when we were in the press box after the interviews or before the interviews, there were those I don't know what the technical term is, but there were those lawn lights to help the grass grow to keep it in good condition. So clearly you don't do that for a turf field. So it was grass laid over turf. Ken, I'm going to take 6 more minutes of your time before we wrap up, just to kind of get bigger pictures. We've talked about PSG, we've talked about Palmeiras, we talked about Porto, the 3 Ps, right? Porto, Palmeiras, PSG. Yes, we talked about the 3. I as from a journalist standpoint, I will say this, I have to add this, from a neutral's perspective, I am thrilled that we will get Messi versus PSG. Thrilled. Dying to see all the things that are said. I know he probably won't do an interview, but just seeing what happens on the field, if there is tension, dissecting every little reaction he has. Like the Zone did a great job, fascinating job of capturing him walking off the field, pretty frustrated, muttering to himself, shaking his head after the tie versus Palmeiras. So the Zone, I think you and I touched on this, has done a great job with the tournament. And I'm looking forward to just this matchup with all the storylines that have Messi involved against the former team, where, again, didn't have his best spell. To me, there's absolutely more motivation for him heading into this one than if it was any other opponent in the round of 16, even though maybe he won't verbalize that. Different reporters, different journalists yesterday try to get Inter Miami teammates to maybe say something to the extent they all played it pretty cool and professional. They're like, he's competitive. He wants to win. But knowing dynamics and knowing how competitive he is and knowing how that stage in his career went, I imagine in that locker room when he sits next to Suarez and he talks to him about the game, he's like, I want to beat the shit out of these guys. I want to beat the shit out of these guys. I can imagine that's how he feels. That's my supposition, though, not inside information.
There will be no juicier storyline this entire tournament than Messi versus PSG. Now, I think for Messi, it's probably less the act of facing PSG because let's be honest, I think that a lot of the negative forces with Messi there at PSG are no longer within the club, at the club, and obviously you're not going to be influenced by the fans. That turned pretty ugly between the PSG fans and Messi as well. But I think that it is what you said, the storylines, the knowledge that he knows the questions that are coming. He knows the discussion that's going to be had. He knows what he is going to be posed post-match. I'm sure it's very, very annoying for him because he knows, he understands, and he is a good prognosticator of that. Not that it takes any sort of ability to do that. He knows what the table set is going to be for this.
David Alphonse says PSG is coming to humiliate Inter Miami. PSG fanboys are making it known on their podcast. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, Luis Enrique is the head coach for PSG. He does have a relationship with, I think, most, if not all, of the Fantastic Four of Inter Miami. So, maybe if PSG gets off to a comfortable lead, they'll maybe take their foot off the pedal a little bit. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see how the match plays out. I'm curious to see how it goes.
Fans, come on, PSG fans just came off of the greatest accomplishment in club history. They finally get over the hurdle and they finally put up the Champions League trophy, and now they're going to be all hell-bent sharp elbows to try and rub Messi's nose in it. That's so lame.
I think it means more for Messi than it does for PSG. Like, I don't think that they have that bad blood.
Yeah.
Maybe the fans do. The fans aren't, as happy with Messi during his 2 years there. But I don't think the team has that bad blood. I could be wrong. I mean, but I don't think the team has that much bad blood. I think it means more for Messi than it does for PSG.
Completely.
The fans just, of course, it means something to them because they weren't too pleased with Messi during his time there.
Go rewatch the final against Inter. Go rewatch the 5-0 drubbing. Remember what you have, and you don't need to embarrass Messi in the process here.
Yeah, I don't think that's their goal. Like, we're going to embarrass this guy. That's our goal. I think they just want to win and move on. Okay, last question for you. We touched on, some of the things that might have gone Inter Miami's way. And we'll do a proper dissecting once the tournament ends, whenever that ends, whether that's next week, whether it's the following week, whenever that ends for Inter Miami, we'll do a proper Miami Total Football Radio dissection as to, what went right for them in this tournament, what they need to emulate in league play when they return to that. But for you, Ken, and we've touched on different elements, sprinkled different things here and there. If you could just sum it all up in one thought and take as much time as you need, what has it been for Inter Miami that they've been able to play well, perform well, exceed expectations, and look like a completely different team? And again, you can touch on all the different elements we've touched on, but just bigger thoughts here. What's led to this incredible, remarkable run?
Well, I think this has been a wildly aggressive Inter Miami side that has not allowed consistent spells of the opponent to dictate the way the match is going to be played. Even when Palmeiras was asking questions in the attack, Inter Miami was defiant. It was well-shaped. And then when they got back on the ball, they had complete knowledge and foresight about what they wanted to do, which is how Suarez was able to touch that ball perfectly onto Allende and hit Palmeiras for that first goal. I think there have been times during MLS play where Inter Miami dominates possession, defenses sit back, and Inter Miami has had a tough time trying to formulate a way to unlock all of that in this tournament. And again, you could see it coming against Philadelphia, and you certainly saw it against Columbus. I'm telling you, that Columbus match was the best possible result for Inter Miami coming into this FIFA Club World Cup, because that's a good quality side, and you beat their brains in, and it did it in a fashion in which there was no drama, and that thing was over at halftime, and the big guns showed up and showed out. And I think that has allowed this team to understand, you know what? I don't think we need to sit back. I think we can be aggressive. And as long as Ustari is going to stand on his head, and as long as Maxi Falcone is going to give maximum effort to get back and help organize the defense, I think this attack has the ability to be able to continue to push forward with aggression, with fortitude, understanding that it's not going to automatically be a tally on the scoreboard for the opponent if you try to take that risk. This has been a more risk-friendly, risk-reward Inter Miami side in this tournament. I think at the base level, that's where the success has come from.
So, I mean, we've touched on a lot of it. I've touched on some things that maybe were intentional through Masche, some things that maybe weren't intentional through injuries and things that have happened, player availability. The one thing I'll add to everything, and again, we'll dissect this more once it's all over for Inter Miami, whenever that is. Maybe it'll be over in July and they're champions of the club.
Yeah.
Probably not. But one thing that I think does play in their favor, and it's something we just touched on, I think it hasn't been talked about enough, and generally speaking, is the roles that they are underdogs. And they are playing, in addition to being underdogs, they're playing teams with different styles of
Yeah.
play. This is not, you're not seeing MLS style teams. I just had the comment from Cara, and I'm trying to find it again, where he says, here it is. Franco, your tweet about seeing different types of football, not just like MLS, solely transitions, has been great too. In MLS, it's still a very physical league. It's gotten better technically, it's gotten better tactically, but the game is still predominantly played in transition. It's back and forth. It's ping pong soccer, as I like to call it. It's a lot of running back and forth. And for Inter Miami, with players who 4 of them are close to 40, 5 if you count Ustadi, but he doesn't do much running. He's a goal. That's going to be a challenge. That's going to be difficult, especially when they are considered the protagonists that are going to have the ball, that need to break the other team down more often than not. There's a lot of elements there, a lot of layers that maybe lead to struggles in MLS that in this tournament, where the game's a little bit more even in terms of who's dictating the possession, there being more spaces to attack, that helps Inter Miami play more to its strengths. I think that is a key element, a key component in what's happened here. I think they'll go back to MLS play, whenever that is, with a crap load of confidence. Even if they lose 5-0 on the weekend or whatever it is, let's say they get blown out, I think this tournament is a huge success, and I think they'll have a lot to be pleased with, a lot to be happy with, a lot to be confident about going back to MLS play. But I still have questions about this team, but once it returns to Major League Soccer, because of the style of play. Like you would see in the game against Porto, again, I didn't touch on this when we talked about the game. There were moments where I was just used to seeing, a team just hit back on the counter when Inter Miami loses the ball. And Porto would have the space. And my feeling was that they would attack that space, but instead of bombarding forward with reckless abandon, they would cut the ball back. They would take a pause, have more patience in their possession. That allows Inter Miami to get back into shape. That doesn't require so much tracking back of some tired or aging legs that physically maybe can't do that function as well. I think that has played a big part in allowing Inter Miami to play more to its strengths, less to its weaknesses. But I do have questions about what happens when MLS play resumes.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Fortunately, there is a transfer window coming up, and there appears to be money to spend. But I think that fortifying the back line with some speed is probably going to be a priority in that transfer window, because I completely agree with you that this team is prone to being hit on the – I mean, look at Orlando. Was absolutely case in point, where the defense a bit slow. I think this tournament, what it has shown for me, though, and this is where the confidence will come in getting back to MLS play, the attack that Inter Miami has had to play because they've had to be hunkered down at times, that's going to lend well to translating to returning to MLS play, and maybe an understanding they don't have to boss possession at all times. It's okay to welcome some pressure and then go and hit, because they've been able to do it so consistently and so deadly and efficiently in this. That's the style of attack that can help you make a postseason run once you get into the MLS Cup playoffs, where you're just not sitting in the midfield trying to unlock defenses. So we'll see how it translates, but I know there is no other MLS team that's preparing for Paris Saint-Germain on Saturday, okay? And that's
Sunday in Atlanta.
Sunday, I'm sorry. That's something that you can put on the mantle for sure. No doubt about it.
Well, we'll see how Inter Miami does this weekend. We'll see how they do in MLS play once they resume. Ken, you've been an amazing guest, my friend. I will definitely invite you back on. No doubt about it. Look, I'm American, right? But I have the Latin American influence there. My roots are very prevalent here on this pod. I don't know if we've ever really had a pure gringo American on the show to give us. I swear to you, we've had Englishmen, we've had Simon Evans, we've had Steve Brenner, we've had of course, we've had a lot of Hispanics. We've had Thomas Rongen, who's of Dutch lineage. I don't think we've ever really had just like a bona fide American on this show speaking football. So I appreciate, and it's refreshing to hear a different type of take. Honestly, it's like we have a very Hispanic approach normally. So it's good to get a different viewpoint and a different way of seeing the beautiful game. So I appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate being a pioneer on the show. Means a lot.
Trailblazing the way.
That's right. That's right. I'm sort of the white Jackie Robinson on this show here. But I want to and also too just a little bit of, because I think this is for the first time a lot of people are meeting me and maybe they've heard me. Yes. But if you don't have Apple TV, and I know a lot of you don't, and maybe sometimes you're trying to get a pirated feed or you're just refreshing Gamecast, the easiest way to consume Inter Miami football live is either on ESPN 106.3 out of West Palm Beach. If you're in Broward Dade, can't get that, or you're not even in Florida, the Deportes Radio FC app, it is free, downloaded. You'll hear me on game days. Same thing, streaming live, YouTube, the ESPN West Palm YouTube. It streams there. And then you might as well fire me up if you do have Apple TV for the home matches. You can hit the live radio function. But I will tell you, and Franco, you know this because you've heard me often, especially with my FAU work, I am the closest thing to the passion level of a Spanish language broadcaster that you're going to get in English language form. It is not boring, okay?
And it's a tough job for Ken, guys. And this is an opinion. I hope I'm not putting him under the microscope here, putting him in a hot seat. Ken does this alone. Ken does this alone. Ken does not have another member in the broadcast booth with him. So he is play-by-play. He is analyst. I don't know if he runs down to the field and does some sideline reporting in the middle of it all. But Ken is. When I said he was a Swiss Army knife, I was not joking. Like, he does it all on the broadcast. It's impressive because it's not an easy job. I mean, in an ideal world, I would think you would have someone there next to you. But that's just my opinion. Ken, it's been amazing to have you on. The people like Ken. They said, bring Ken back.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
He's not nearly as negative as the usual guest. Kana says, as simple as this, Ken knows his shit. Respect.
Thank you, Ken.
Tank721 says, I love that. We need more future episode. Vamos, Ken, with the salute emoji.
Let's go,
Ken. People are a fan of Ken. Ken is the man of the people. Man of the people. Kyle says, respect FAU fellow alums too. So there you go. There you go. All right. We will leave it there for you guys. Thank you for sticking with us for a long episode. I am going to let Ken go because if I don't, Vivian is going to probably call me personally, send me a message and tell me, let my husband be. We have dinner. We need to be with the girls. We need to relax. We need to chill out. It's 10 o'clock. What the hell's going on? So we'll leave it there. For Ken LaVicka, I am Franco Panizo. We will be back next week. Don't know what day, but I'll be back next week here on Miami Total Football Radio, the show. Enjoy the match against PSG. We'll talk to you guys soon.